But of course, in Argentina, pampas is the grassland that's farther to the north. So it can be a little bit confusing for those of you, it's your first time here. When they're referring to pampas down here, it's really steppe. Okay? Okay, so this is an interesting zone that we're in. We're in the area where we have intense influence of the southern Patagonian ice field. There's a transition between this Magellanic forest to the Patagonian steppe. And here we are the other day when we were out at that beautiful Aguilar Glacier. You remember way back to day before yesterday? I mean, it's remarkable to think that yesterday morning we were still on the ship, right? And we were on Isla Magallanes, you know, right off the shore there. So this was a remarkable time. I didn't get to share any of the photographs with you from this journey, but here we were still in the Magellanic forest. And indeed, there is some Magellanic forest here. It's transitioning. And I was quite impressed with how sincerely and deeply and seriously you all take mud. And I just wanted to share some of the images I took of you as we traveled through. For me, it was a bryophyte-rich forest, but I'm convinced for most of you it was a muddy experience. And I have the photographic proof.
You got me. You got me.
I got you. Yeah. But look at the serious intent and regard of everyone. Going through this. There are some smiles, but there's a lot of deep philosophical thought that's going on here as well. You all look beautiful in your contemplation. Some are more merry than others. This was very interesting. I was wondering what was going on here. I saw the tag Nikon, and I was like, okay, great. So people are happy at this point because they're out of the mud, so everybody's smiling. And we were out on these remarkable intertidal flats. I mean, it was a living carpet, wasn't it? And so again, here's the mussel team documenting the incredible richness of that intertidal zone. Again, remember, when the tide is out, the table is set in these parts. And here we are. We didn't land, but look, they're absolutely glowing with joy because they have their penguin. That was a lot of fun. So we got here, and this is what it looks like when you have some blue patches up there, and thankfully we got that this afternoon. So good on all of you that you were patient enough and weren't getting sour with the weather. So we've gotten it. It's usually like 50-50, let's say, to just average it out in terms of the time that it's in the clouds and the time that it's clear as it has been this afternoon. It's a beautiful area, and it's the transition zone. Many of you went up to Lago Grey. You did the walk today, heading up towards the glacial snout to the front there. That classic, you have bragging rights, you know, that you did part of the W. And it's a land that, of course, has water. The moisture in the atmosphere is replete with just so many amazing rainbows. And then you get up to the snout of the glacier, and you have these. Weren't the blues incredible? Have you ever seen blues like that? I mean, absolutely amazing. Sapphire. I've seen blues there that approach what I would say is cobalt blue. Absolutely amazing. What's remarkable is the kind of layers that you have in jagged topography between the seracs of the glacial snout and then several layers of incredibly jagged terrain and the rocks behind going up to the Pays Massif. We've seen on our drive-in lots of water in the lakes here. We had moisture yesterday afternoon and early this morning. You've seen forests. Of course, some of them are burnt. These are considered to be transitional Magellanic forests. And this is what it looks like in the burned areas. It looks very dry and quite sad, I must say. But, you know, fire has become part of the cultural landscape here, and there's a lot to say about that at a later time. So these are some of the icebergs that you see as you're doing that Lago Grey walk. I wish I could have been with you today, but I'm feeling better, so hopefully I'll be able to hike with you tomorrow. So beautiful forests, and in these forests you have some of those incredible bryophytes as well. The trees are all notophagous. You have that transition to what they call pampas, which is steppe here. It's shrub-dominated with some bunch grasses, and the guanacos make that habitat, that plant community, their home. Of course, people have been living here for a very long time. One of the oldest sites is just a little ways north of here along the coast. The earliest recording of human habitation in all of the Americas at 14,700 years old. We will be seeing these pictographs when we go on our hike all together on the Anakin Trail. These people lived in steppe habitat as it transitions into the Magianic forest, and in these parts hunting guanaco and doing some fishing as well. There are still gaucho culture people here, and this is a shot that's taken at the locale where we'll be having our estancia asado. Please come to that if you can, unless you really must do some trail, which of course we all respect and understand. But it's a fantastic sort of end of, it's not the absolute end, but it's an end of Patagonia meal because we leave the very next day. And this is done in classic style. So to consider all of that amazing diversity, the Magianic forest, the amazing bryophytes there, the trees, welcome, we have to consider some basic concepts. And if we're trying to understand in a deeper way how they came to be the way they are. And one I've already referred to is the idea of habitat. That's the address. That's where an animal actually lives. The other I've also referred to is the niche, or niche, depending on how you like to pronounce German ideological words. It means profession, essentially, what an individual does, what it does, what is done to it. So habitat, where you live; niche, what you do and what is done to you. And species, of course, because when we talk about the diversity of a place, we're quantifying that in terms of the number of species that are there, or the kinds of the sheer number of species. And so, remember again, naturally occurring, reproductively isolated, population of a kind of offspring that's producing viable offspring. And what's rich here are not the trees in the forest. Again, they're all notophagous. They're all southern beech. There's 3 species, essentially. But what's rich here are the shrubs. And again, what's incredibly rich here are these bryophytes. And this is just showing you that as you go down in more southerly latitudes, so higher latitudes, and this is 52.5, in green are the number of non-vascular plants, and in tan are the number of vascular plants. So these are all non-vascular plants, lichens, mosses, liverworts. And bryophytes are non-vascular plants. They have no circulatory system. They absorb all their water and nutrients through their leaves. They require water for the sperm to transport to the egg. They can disperse with the wind, but the sperm does not get transported by the wind. That's a fundamental difference with flowering plants, okay? And they are frequently associated with mycorrhizal fungi. So they're a very interesting group of plants. And this is just showing you that if you were to compare the subantarctic Magellanic forests in terms of ratios of non-vascular plants to vascular plants, it's almost 1-to-1 down here. And anywhere else you go in the world, it's not anything close to that. So the real diversity that exists down here in these forests and in this zone, which is transition to steppe, is in the non-vascular plants and in the shrubs. And by the way, the award or bounty on the porcelain orchid is still out. Has anybody seen it? No? Still looking? Isn't that the most beautiful orchid you've ever seen? It's absolutely gorgeous. So you know, again, you get the drink of your choice, which you all know you've already paid for. Okay, so there are many kinds of liverworts. I just wanted to share with you some of my joy about bryophytes. And so when we were walking through the forest, liverworts are the oldest plants on terrestrial plants on Earth. They come from 450 million years ago. They're the first terrestrial plants. So that's quite something. And this is what they look like. And if you're looking at this, you have to go down in here, to try and find the liverwort, okay? So this is, you remember we saw these gunneras and we saw some other mosses and liverworts and hornworts as we were going through there. But these are what are called thallose liverworts. Thallose means they have a kind of broad, almost squamous, like spongy leaf like that. And then there are also liverworts that look more like this. These are leafy liverworts, and here you have leafy liverworts right over here. And what typifies liverworts is that their sexual organ, which is this thing right up here, is called the sporophyte. And the sporophyte tends to be elongate ovoid on top, and it can have different kinds of leaves that are coming out in this manner. Remember, they share that property of having to require water for sexual reproduction. They do not have roots that absorb water. All water and nutrients come through their leaves. This is moss. Moss evolved from liverworts. And so you're all familiar with different kinds of mosses. I'm sure what typifies mosses is that they have a radial symmetry. The leaves come out around the stem. Their sporophyte, or sexual organ, is also on what's called a stalk or seta, and then they also have an elongate capsule. But you can always tell a moss from a liverwort because the mosses have radial symmetry, whorls of leaves that are coming off the stem. And finally, the hornworts, which are very, very strange. Hornworts have a sexual organ in which the sporophyte comes out like others, but then the capsule at the end continues in that trend. It's not a capsule. And they're thought to be one of the more evolved, if you will, of these non-vascular plants, and perhaps share an ancestor with all vascular plants. So, what are not plants? These guys. The different lichens that you'll find around here. Absolutely fantastic. So you remember Freddie fungi and Alice algae took a lichen to each other. And so in particular, these crustose lichens are living on rocks, sometimes on trees, and you have to go down underneath the other bryophytes to find them. Some of the lichens have more foliose or foliar type of morphology or form, and those are referred to as foliose lichens. And then finally, the one you're very familiar with, I'm sure, is a kind of usnia. It's a kind of a hanging lichen that's referred to as a fruticose lichen, and that's very common in these forests here as well. So as you walk through these forests, any of you who are going to take any of the hikes that go through the forests here, just think that if you start taking the time and digging through what's on the ground cover there, you'll start uncovering what in some cases in a single tree can be 100 species of epiphytes. Okay, those are plants that grow on plants, including liverwort. So it's really quite fantastic. Now, of course, the fungi are very diverse here as well. And there's a couple different forms of this one, which is called orange peel. And we were getting quite excited about this one. And it wasn't only myself, but Maurice that was really excited about this. It was a beautiful example. And one of our team was really excited. He's smiling at this orange peel down there. Orange peels make people smile and get a lot of interest. And he was thinking about, what about the vascular plants? And so one of the most remarkable success stories down here in South America are the asters. You have aster annuals, you have aster bushes or shrubs, with woody tissue. You have aster trees that are 35 meters high. So asters, or daisy trees, shrubs, and forbs are incredibly successful in South America, and it absolutely astonishes a lot of people who are visiting it for the first time. We saw this one. Do you remember this guy? Wow, wasn't that beautiful? Oh, see, I'm always looking for those reds and greens, reds and greens, reds and greens. And it's interesting to note that these, do you remember these chowder berries? How big they were? They grow biggest when they're in association with bryophytes. Because bryophytes have mycorrhizal fungi that attach to their rhizomes, to the root structures. And so that introduces lots of nutrients into the soil. And so you consider these to be the best naturally fertilized chowder shrubs on the planet. No wonder the berries are so huge. Yeah? No wonder. So it's interesting to speculate, to be a detective, to do a Sherlock Holmes when you see absolutely gigantic berries, why that might be the case. Well, with all of these different species, 100 species of epiphytes on a single tree, dozens of species of woody shrubs out here in the steppe, how can that be? And here's the key. It's called the principle of competitive exclusion. And it says that if two species have identical niches, remember, a niche is what you do and what is done to you, then there's one of three developments that are going to occur. One of the species will go extinct. The second possibility is one species will migrate out of the area. And thirdly, one species will adopt or evolve, and in so doing, it changes its niche. The principle in this is that 100% niche overlap is just non-sustainable. One of these three things has to happen. And so, when you look out and you see two lovely grebes, what that ought to, these are two grebes from here. One is the great grebe, and there's another, there are actually three grebes that occur here in the park. These are both taken on the lakes here in the park. And when you see these grebes, you should be thinking, well, what does one do that's different than the other? And they actually go to different diving depths. So they're not actually competing for the same food. So the diversity of Patagonia in terms of its birds, in terms of its insects, in terms of all of its plants, can be understood by understanding there's not 100% niche overlap between species that apparently are very, very similar. So how does that happen? How do you get fine differences that allow apparently similar species to coexist? Well, over long periods of time, the expressed